And thank you everybody for coming. We're so delighted to be able to host this conversation. But one of the things that's really important about Middle Church, those of you who know us, today I was told, what an ironic thing that your name is Middle. And I think maybe not, maybe it's a fateful thing that our name is Middle, but just to be able to be revolutionary in our love, to be fierce in our love, but also to be revolutionary in our conversations. And I think that means humility. Like, I'm not hosting this conversation because I'm an expert on Afghanistan. I'm absolutely not. But I'm an expert on love, and my heart has been broken these last couple of weeks, the way this transition has happened, and the way the Taliban are now back in charge of this government. My heart is broken for every woman, girl, every government supporter, helper, everyone who feels afraid, everyone who's under threat. My heart is broken. And I'm worried, I'll say, as a starting place, that this moment right here could take us back to some other moments where we've been, where we broad stroke the way we talk about people, the way we extrovert our latent anti-Islamic sentiment, the way we cast people in roles that they're not in. And with the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming, and that sense of, towers falling and the way all of this rolled into human history as this 20-year war, I'm worried. And I want us to be people that exercise a kind of holy curiosity about who we are and what we've been through. And we can listen to the news, or we can listen to human stories. So that Shekaiba would come and talk to us today about her story blows my heart wide open, and full of compassion for you and yours, and grateful. And just to say, as you say any introductory thing you want to say about yourself, I'd love to just ask you first, can you tell us how you got here story? How did you end up in this Zoom room, in this country, in this moment because of your story? Talk to us about that first.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Jacqui Lewis, for having me here. And I'm honored to be on the same Zoom call with General Ron Lewis. Thank you so much. And also thank you to Ben, who is a family friend. I've known him for years, for giving me this platform, and also to your Middle Church members for being here listening. So gosh, how did I get here? I am a child of basically an area that's been in conflict for now 40 years. So I am I'm a product of that. I mean, that's really what brought me to America. So this at the moment, what we're seeing in Afghanistan in 40 years, maybe in 10 years or 20 years, those kids are going to be talking about Afghanistan like I'm talking about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And my family immigrated when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the catalyst for the last 40 years of war. It has been kind of nonstop. And it's, I have memories as a 10-year-old of Russian tanks and going down our streets.
Mm-hmm.
And I have memories of Russian soldiers with their Kalashnikov, I guess, or whatever kind of weapons that they had, waiting for at the bread store, like these bread stores that we have in Afghanistan, and everybody just being frightened and letting the soldiers go first. And as an adult, I think about those images, and I remember like being completely frightened as a 10-year-old. But now that I think about it, I'm like, my God, those were young boys
Mm-hmm.
that were sent to war in a foreign country, that those poor Russian boys didn't speak the language. This was probably the first time out of their villages
Mhm.
And here we are as civilians, we're frightened of them. They were probably just equally frightened of us.
Mm. Mm.
And that's who we send to war. We send our young men and women.
Yeah.
And my family, my dad works, actually he's retired now, but my dad worked for UNICEF in Kabul.
Okay.
And
Yes.
he saw all his colleagues and friends one by one either emigrating.
Uh-huh.
I mean, when I say emigrating, like nobody talked about it. Like the next day they didn't show up at work, or the door was locked that the neighbor didn't even know they had emigrated. Or if they were lucky to immigrate, um, they got themselves out. But
Kind of
most
under the cover of darkness, you're saying.
under the
Nobody
cover,
knew.
nobody talked about it. You didn't want the Secret Service to come after you. And if they weren't lucky enough to get out, he saw his colleagues disappearing.
Mm.
So the Afghan Communist Party would come to your door in the middle of the night, take you for questioning, and then you would never be seen again. And that actually happened at our home, where my uncle, who was a graduate student at Kabul University studying, um, he was a law student, and at that point they would take all the young men away, and him studying law was probably, uh, they saw that as a threat. In the middle of the night, uh, they came to our house, they knocked at the door, and what was really sad, and this is, again, I mean, I'm a child, I get this a secondhand story because I woke up in the morning and the whole house, which is usually um, filled with people making tea, everybody's chit-chatting, to absolute quietness, and I'm looking around like, what happened? And that's when we were told that your uncle was taken away at gunpoint last night,
Mm.
and we would probably never see him again. And what was sad, that when the knock came in the middle of the night, he was the one who answered the door.
Oh my goodness.
If it hadn't been him answering the door, he could have jumped over the wall to get to the neighbors
Right. Escape.
and
Yeah.
escape. But the
Mm.
fact that he opened the door is when they took him. And we had never seen him since. Because one of the places that they took him, and I'm sure General Lewis knows this, is they took him to one of the biggest prisons in Afghanistan, and that prison was built in the 1960s by the Russians.
By the
It's
Russians.
called it's called Pulacharhi, and
Mm.
the name, which is funny, Pul means bridge, Charhi means the revolving bridge. But the thing was that everybody who ever made it to Pulacharhi never came out of it.
Okay. One-way bridge to
One-way
hell,
bridge.
maybe. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, in my statistics, uh, the the Dutch government in The Hague, they did a full research, I think right after 1989. I think what they did a research from 1979 all the way to like 1990 or 1989, when the 1989 is when the Russians left. During that 10-year, they estimate something like 28,000 people were killed in that prison.
A Holocaust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was always, when you want to control a society, you get rid of the artists,
Yeah.
you get rid of the writers, the lawyers,
Mhm.
you know, the judges.
Yes.
You get rid of um, people who work in the humanitarian sector. You get rid of the educated class.
Yes.
And what happened with the educated class? You had a group of educated class who fled the country, and then a group who were killed. And this is the exact same thing is happening right now in Afghanistan.
Can you say a little bit more about that, Shekaiba, the exact same thing? Can you connect the dots from that time to this time? And maybe is there a middle place? But just tell us how you make meaning of that time and this time in Afghanistan.
Um, well, the only thing I can say, and looking back in retrospective, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think the Russians weren't as bad as the Taliban,
Mm,
because the Russians, I mean, a lot of the atrocities that happened during that time happened with the Afghan Communist Party. Obviously, it had the backing of Russia. But I think what's going on right now is kind of similar. Well, it is similar to the first time the Taliban took over, because I don't think this group has changed.
mm,
The only thing um, that they have gotten better at is they've become media savvy.
mm, mhm.
And the reason why I'm saying that, I'm just not saying that because every other news media is saying that, but it's because um, of the stories that are coming out from the provinces that they have conquered um, in the last 6 months or more, where people are so frightened. They have actually. I mean, I talk to my cousins every day because I'm trying to get them out right now, and
First cousin you have here, right? In your chat, in your clan, you said.
in my clan, yes. So I'm trying to get four cousins out, and they're saying, and so the the four, two of them in their 20s, so they've never lived. I'm sorry, I'm going to change my the sun. There we go. They have never lived under the Taliban. So the two of them in their 20s, and then the other two who were in their early 30s, 31, 32, they were little, so they kind of don't have the experience of what it means to be living under the Taliban. So they are frightened, and now for the first time in their lives as young ladies, where the Taliban has come in, and people are aware, and they have said, well, yeah, so all you young ladies, you're going to start walking around in a hijab. So now, I mean, right there, your right to dress how you want is now restricted, because it is their version of Islam and the extreme version of Islam that they're telling everybody to live by.
Yeah. Shekaiba, you and I lived through 9/11 20 years ago.
Yes.
You were here and not there, but your family was here and there. How does that, how does this, that episode, let's say, in the Afghanistan story, affect what you think about now, right? You got out of the country when you were 11 with your parents. The Russians were not as bad as the Taliban. America comes in. Can you just tell us more, paint a picture for us, photographer, of how those pieces come together for you?
Oh God. I mean, I remember, like all of us, uh, the day that 9/11 happened. I mean, I remember that as clear as day. I was, I was, I was, God, I was in the Northern State Parkway in Long Island driving to work, because I lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but I was working in Long Island.
Wow.
So I was the lucky one who would do the reverse commute to go to work.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into my classroom, and I had a student say to me, "Oh, a tower hit one of the tall buildings." Because back then, I mean, we didn't have the iPhones that we have now. We still had the flip phones, which my
Right.
kids don't know what that is. Um, so obviously you couldn't get your information. And the first thing that went through my mind when this student walks in and tells me that a plane has hit one of the buildings, I thought, oh my God. So I'm thinking like one of those little planes, like it's got the two-seater, and I'm thinking somebody probably, maybe the pilot had a heart attack, didn't know where to land and kind of slammed the building. That's where I was thinking. And then as the day went by and and um and we saw and we knew more what was going on. I mean, I cannot tell you. I just feel like I lived, I honestly lived the trauma of the Russian invasion.
Mm,
So that was the second time in my life I lived the trauma. And then last week was the third time.
third time.
Yeah. It brings all of that. And and then the following weeks afterwards, I mean, I honestly, the Islamophobia was absolutely stifling.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. And then that Islamophobia, and then people obviously for the first time can point to a map where Afghanistan is or where Iraq is, where any of these places were. And unfortunately for Afghanistan, um, that none of the 9/11 terrorists were even from Afghanistan. They were not Afghan nationals. They were from other Middle Eastern countries, but till this day, the dialogue um, that I have with people, they make the connection. Well, 9/11 happened, and then we invaded Afghanistan because the Afghans were the terrorists.
Right.
So I have I have friends who have told me that that in their children's schools they have said that. And
It's fact. It's fact.
and and then my friends are like, well, I had to go and talk to the social studies teacher and say, not one of the terrorists was from it. None of the terrorists were from Afghanistan. So why did we go bomb Afghanistan?
Why
And,
did we go bomb it? What's your feeling? What's your understanding? What's your theory? Why did we do that?
well, I mean, my theory is that yes, we Afghanistan at that point had become um, had a failed government. And
Yeah.
yes, these terrorist organizations did um, use Afghanistan as a host country,
Right.
but um, these are the same. It's interesting. When we use the people to fight our wars, we call them mujahideens.
Mhm.
We use them to fight the Russians with the funding and the money and everything. Not only us, I mean, there is quite a lot of finger pointing going at this.
Yes.
And one of the finger pointings that I would like to do is Pakistan has a huge role in this, and so does Saudi Arabia and the Arab Gulf states with
Yeah.
Arabian money.
Yeah.
All of this funding went into the Mujahideen. And then
Mhm.
when those Mujahideen fighters, when they fought the Russians, well, now you have trained a group of people who are essentially, they that's what they do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they got to shift their view as to where else is the next war. And
Yeah.
then um and then obviously that same group had taken Afghanistan as hostage.
Yeah.
I really do say that. I think
Take
the
it.
Taliban took the
Mhm.
whole entire country as a hostage. And then until we went there, and our main reason was to go there to get Osama bin Laden. All right,
Right.
so go get him. And then after he was gone, then it was a lot of talk about nation building. So when I see Biden last week talk about, oh, we never went there for a nation building, then why were you there for the last 20 years?
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to nation build now, you're going to nation build 20 years, 30 years from now, because now the country of Afghanistan, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't exist.
Mm.
I mean, the Taliban came and took our flag down.
Mhm. Yeah.
just took our flag down and put their flag. And that tells you right now, you know what the interesting part was? To see the Taliban sitting at the presidential palace, at the presidential desk. The minute I saw that image, I'm like, oh, well, you know what? We already had that at the Capitol Hill. So, so my brain was like, oh, I think I see, I think I'm making a connection between the two groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing how for anybody to think, even in America or the rest of the world, how fragile a democracy is and how quickly
Mhm.
it can fall.
How fragile a democracy is.
Mhm.
Yeah. Shekaiba, you said we, so you are a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I am. I consider myself at this point Afghan American. I mean, I have lived more. I mean, you know, I have lived 40 years in this country, 10 years in Afghanistan. So I think after 40 years, I can say I'm American.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Ron in now. Um, however, Ben does his magic of highlights and things. Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you, Shekaiba.
Yeah.
We're going to come back over there, okay? Ron, you know how much I believe in the power of stories. In our family, that's always like, let's tell each other that story. And so to have Shekaiba here talking story and you talking story is my deep honor. I just wonder if you could jump in on, you who are West Point trained general, steeped in this history. Could you go over some of this ground? 1979, the Soviets invade Afghanistan. And what then, Ron? Like, give us a bit of, your 5 minute, this is what happened from there type thing. Can you do that?
I can do that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jackie. And it's always good to be up with you. And I love the conversations that you lead. I mean, I always get something out of it. Shekaiba, Tashakur, for your story and for sharing. Really appreciate that.
Oh,
And
sure.
look forward to talking with you some more. Yeah, so what happened? I think Shekaiba laid this out. This Civil War, right? I mean, the country has been at war for 40 years.
Mhm.
The last time just for your audience's perspective, Jackie, I served in Afghanistan 2008, 2009, when we were, as Americans, doing most of the fighting and, not really building the Afghan capacity as it should have been. I mean, we were doing most of the fighting, and we were doing the coordination with Pakistan on the border, and the Afghan National Security Forces, the Afghan government under Karzai was very nascent and just getting going. So that was 2008, 2009. I was a colonel. Very different experience than the last time I was there, which was 2013, 14. I brought the country down from 17,000 plus to only 8,000 on the ground. The logistics person pushing things out, and I trained. My counterpart then was an Afghan two-star, General Waziri. He had the 201st Corps, which is the 7 provinces that are to the northeast of Kabul. Some of the very, very tough terrain, Nuristan and Kunar and Kapisa and places like that. So my last time there was 2013, 14. And again, my primary role was reducing our footprint and then building up the Afghans' capability. And then, like I said, my primary counterpart that I sat with every day was a 2-star general named General Waziri. He had 20,000 Afghan National Security Forces underneath his command, 10,000 police and 10,000 soldiers. And again, every day we sat together figuring out how to secure those 7 provinces to the northeast of Kabul. So what happened, and why for 40 years? I'll say last time I was there, 2013, 14, I actually saw some pictures of Afghanistan back in the 60s. And it was amazing to see those pictures. It looked like Kabul looked like a little America back in in the 60s, right? I mean, we got American jazz places, jazz bands and stuff going over and playing in Kabul, and people with, are the way we dress in the 60s, right?
Western dress.
Yeah, it was just amazing to see those pictures and be there. But so civil war, an Afghan Communist Party comes to power in basically the late 70s, and we essentially fight a proxy war against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, right? I mean, as we've done a lot during the Cold War period of time, we supported, the Mujahideen, the Taliban to be in defeating the Soviet Union on the ground. I can remember being at the academy 83 to 87, and we're always reading in the newspaper about the war that's going on, not only the Iran-Iraq war that's going on simultaneously, but the Soviet Union being bogged down in Afghanistan. And quite frankly, we used that proxy war against the Soviet Union to essentially bankrupt and defeat the Soviet Union, right? I mean, wall didn't come down until November 11th of '89, but that we essentially fought a proxy war against communism in Afghanistan. We supported
Like the Vietnamese, like the Vietnam War, like I'm doing proxy war. I'm just trying to tell you, like the Vietnam War,
like a Vietnam, exactly right, exactly right. And if people, I'm sure everyone's read, or seen Charlie Wilson's War and that kind of thing. So yes, we absolutely supported the Mujahideen in fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. After the Soviet Union left, after the Russians left in '89, basically the Taliban came to power in the early '90s, through a messy civil war, and ran the country very brutally, right? Sharia law, beheadings and whippings and public punishments and that kind of thing. It became an ultra purist, religious zealot. I mean, that's what the Taliban stands for, basically madrasa students, right? I mean, it's like the plural of madrasa students. So these are all, men who believe in the, kind of extreme Islamic teachings and jihad and that kind of thing. And they came to power in the early '90s. President Clinton was pressured to basically not have any sort of relationships with the Taliban at the time because of the way that they treated women, girls, and the fact that Al Qaeda and Bin Laden, really became welcome there, and the Taliban refused to extradite Bin Laden to us. Yeah. So there was pressure all the way back to the Clinton administration to not recognize this form of government. Unfortunately, they're back. Do I trust and believe that they're going to be different? I completely agree with Shekaiba's point on being more media savvy and having public relationship skills, but I don't believe that they have fundamentally changed, and I'm concerned for someone who has spent a couple of years on the ground and lost soldiers and stood in too many ramp ceremonies, sending people back home, missed too many anniversaries and birthdays, and in my lifetime. I am very concerned that they are back in power. Will they become a sanctuary again for Al Qaeda and ISIS and the Haqqani network? And I don't know. I don't know, and I'm not sure that that's knowable right now. But I am very concerned that they're back in power. I think they're probably on their best behavior right now, Jacqui. Just internet. Well, I think they're on their best behavior right now,
which is not great behavior. But
I'm sorry.
It's not great behavior. But
no, it's absolutely not. It's absolutely not. But the coordination is at least allowing safe passage to get our American citizens to the airport, and special immigrant visa holding Afghans, and then contractors and our other Afghan partners that we really need to get out of there, just to allow some safe passage. And hold at bay the crowd so that the airfield's not being overwhelmed. I mean, we saw those pictures at the very beginning, right? So that's just not the U.S. military footprint on the ground that is providing order there. There is a modicum of order that's being provided by by the Taliban around the area right now. So that behavior is welcome. I don't know that that will be the case for much longer. I don't know that to be sure, Jack.
Thank you, Ron. Let me jump in and ask you this kind of question because it feels almost obvious to me, but also not, right? I mean, you have a civil war, you have American engagement. Then there's this space where the Taliban comes to power. And then we have American engagement. And the Taliban surrender, is what I'm remembering. And then we cease our engagement and the Taliban's back in power. What has American foreign policy done to put Afghanistan where it is? What did we do with our special selves?
Sure. Well, you know, you have a lot of people rewriting history right now, Jacqui, you know, there's a lot of finger pointing, there's a lot of bipartisan, there's a lot of partisan finger pointing, who's to blame and that kind of thing. But let's go back to why we went in the first place, right? You know, Shekaiba's completely right. You're correct. A lot of Saudi, you know, the terrorists were not, Afghans, but the sanctuary existed there in Afghanistan, and it provided a place from which Al Qaeda, Bin Laden could get resources, plan, rehearse, and essentially launch the attack on our country on 9/11. Okay, so the original going into Afghanistan was about Bin Laden, Al Qaeda, diminishing that capability, eventually, you know, finding, capturing, killing Bin Laden. That was the whole reason for going in initially. What became apparent, I mean, we did that a decade ago, right? I mean, we killed Bin Laden under President Obama 10 years ago. But what became apparent is there was an insurgency that still remained. The Taliban still, they didn't completely go away. I mean, they sought sanctuary over in Pakistan, a group called TTP, you know, but basically the Taliban, you know, over in Pakistan. You know, Mullah Omar, who was the leader of the Taliban from the very beginning, you know, he's got sanctuary over in, you know, kind of he's got sanctuary over in Pakistan. But there was an insurgency that still existed inside of Afghanistan. There was still a Taliban presence. There was still, if you're out in a rural area where you don't have the reach of the central government, the central Afghan government, you don't have the police, the army, the provincial government, you don't have that reach out in the, you know, in the hinterlands, you know, way out in the rural areas. The Taliban still existed there, and they provided order and structure and protection, quite frankly, from, you know, from this. People were suspect of the central government, and well, why can't I make money off of my poppy that's here? And you know, so the insurgency still existed. The Taliban still existed, even while we were on the ground. Just they weren't in control, but they were in various areas throughout the country. So we attempted, Jack, over, you know, besides that initial mission, we attempted to teach the Afghans to counter their own insurgency, right? Which is a very tough mission. Counterterrorism is one thing. So countering Al Qaeda, countering Bin Laden, that takes a skill set that can be done a certain way. Counterinsurgency is very tough and very difficult. It requires a lot. It requires a strong central government, right? I mean, you've got, you know, Karzai and then Ghani. You know, you have to have a strong central government, which is respectful and provides good governance, takes care of its people. You have to have a great connection between your military and that government. You have got to have alternatives. I mean, insurgency means we're against the main government, right? I mean, that's what insurgency is. We have a political issue with, and we're going to fight against the central government. So that central government must have some legitimacy and some value to the people, so that they don't choose this alternative called the insurgents, right? I mean, and I will just, I won't make that long-winded. I will just tell you, we never really got there on teaching the Afghans to be able to counter their own insurgency through, a non-corrupt, well-governed, well-synchronized military government economic effort that would give the country something to really believe in as an alternative to the Taliban. I don't think we ever got there. That's my opinion.
Well,
I'm very disappointed in that. I'm
Yeah.
very disappointed in that, but we never got them to where they can
Sure.
provide a great alternative to. Thus, you get people just putting their weapons down and not fighting for that illegitimate, corrupt.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. When I hear Shekaiba talk about nation building and Biden saying nation building, not nation building, right? And I don't know this, so I'm asking it really as a question for you, and then I'll ask Shekaiba too. But I'm asking Ron, did we fail at building a nation? Did we fail at our aim to help build a nation? Did we? And this is me mashing stories, so forgive me, everybody. I'm mashing stories, right? I think about American presence in South America. I think about American presence in Central America. I think about American presence in Korea, American presence in the Middle East. Have we set up governments, not set up governments? Have we set the stage, love, for refugees, in drug countries, where so now we've got people at the border trying to get in, and have we set up? I'm talking something deeper than the military strategy, and I know you know that. I mean something like economic strategy, or something like political strategy, or something like building up our own nation strategy, right? Like, what have we done? What have we done that we could have done better in terms of littering? Sorry, y'all, kind of littering the geopolitical stage with brokenness. She says as a clergy.
No, I think that's the right question. I think when we do after action reviews and lessons learned from the past 20 years or whatever, when we look back, with open eyes on, was it worth it, and what strategies failed, what strategies worked. I think there'll be time to do that, especially after we get all of our people out, right? Mission number one right now, and get as many of the SIV and Afghans out. I think there'll be a call for, and there'll be some very clear thinking once we have a little bit of distance from this, and can look back clearly. I think that we made a huge difference over the last 20 years over there. I think we made a huge difference. When I look at the country in 08, 09, I mean, I'd love to hear Shekaiba's perspective on that, but I look at 08, 09 and how the place looked versus 13, 14, and then the times I've gone back with the Secretary of Defense in 15 and 16 and that kind of thing. What a huge buildup in infrastructure there, right? I mean, just the roads and buildings and schools and hospitals and that kind of thing that were constructed, had a huge impact on the country. I mean, a huge impact. When I look at the women in government and and I look at the women who started their own businesses over there, entrepreneurship, it's never going to be American. We didn't try to make a Western democracy, I don't think. But what was done in the name of, again, trying to counter the insurgency, trying to make this place a viable place that could defend itself, that could generate wealth and income and tax people, and it could just run. And the effort to do that, I think, made a huge difference over there, especially with what I saw. Now, there are some impossible things being said in this partisan divide we have in this country, like, go get all of that stuff back. We don't want the Taliban to have that. Well, okay, well that's impossible. I mean, that's impossible. There's no way you're going to go take the equipment back or the things that we did for the Afghan government and the Afghan National Security Forces. You're not going to take that back from the Taliban unless you want to go back to war and have 100,000 of us on the ground. It's just not going to happen. So I'd like to see that rhetoric stop. It's so easy to point fingers and make this a partisan piece. We're in a mess. It is very messy. We did not do a good job of getting out of there. You want to ask why and who's to blame? Did it start with the Trump administration? Why were we, America, negotiating with the Taliban without the Afghan government there?
Right.
How does that make the Afghan government legitimate if they're not even at the table? We're negotiating with terrorists.
So that's a mistake.
I mean, there's so many mistakes.
Yeah.
We didn't process enough visa pieces during the Trump administration to start getting people out because we're anti-immigrant stuff. We should have started doing this a long time ago, knowing that we were going to get out. So there's plenty of blame to go around. I would say though, Jack, what I saw, and again, General Waziri, he and I sat together every day, ate, discussed morning updates, went and mourned with him as he's lost soldiers. We did strategic planning. We went and saw all the provincial governors. I'm in the blue house with him. I'm in there seeing the president with him. But Ron, I thank you in America for what you've done for us. I thank you. I would not have this headquarters. We wouldn't have these vehicles. You've lost a lot of blood. You're here missing things. It's our turn to fight. This is, I trust in the theory. It's like, it's our turn to fight. You all have fought, but here are my shortcomings. Like, I would give him intelligence as he needed it. I'd provide him the air that he needed because he just didn't have an Air Force at the time. So I would judiciously provide him the things that he needed, in order to succeed. He needed help with logistics. They don't have a good logistical system. But by the way, if your soldiers are not getting paid, if they don't have bullets, if they don't have gas because the gas is being siphoned off and sold on the black market, what soldier wants to be out on a hilltop somewhere, not being checked on by a leader, not getting his or her mail, not getting paid? Those are failures in systems and leadership, which will make it very difficult for someone to want to die for their country. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Ron. I want to make sure that I bring Shekaiba back in for the two of you to talk with me, maybe even with each other. Guys, I don't know, I want to hear from them and maybe I want to hear from you, but could you use the chat to write questions or responses, okay? And just do that, y'all. But Shekaiba, can you and Ron talk for a minute? I think I want to ask you a question that I hope leads you and he to a chat, and it's a question that's not on anything we sent y'all, so I'm making it up. But Shekaiba, you have family there, and a clan there, and story there, and Ron, you have colleagues there, and from Afghan colleagues and U.S. colleagues there. Today, what do you wish would happen? What moves us forward, Shekaiba? Let's start with you. How can we, Ben is saying it better than me, how can we grow a democracy, foster democracy without the fighting? What can we do now? What do you think, hope, wish we could do now? What's possible is my question for both of you, with Shekaiba going first.
It's a very interesting question because this morning I had a talk with a friend and we were just discussing Afghanistan very briefly as we both are grabbing a cup of coffee in town. And he said something very interesting. He said, the whole world is watching this country burn to the ground and we're all watching it. And that's very powerful because we are all watching it. And at this point, it's about getting our soldiers out. It's about getting the American citizens out. It's about getting the people the Afghan citizens who helped the US in the last 20 years. Now, I can say that personally because my cousin worked with the US Corps of Engineers, and he's an engineer, graduate of Kabul University,
Mhm.
and he was working with the soldiers on in their building projects. And Ryan is absolutely right. In the last 20 years, there had been a lot of um, building going on, infrastructure building. So he works with the US, and he was lucky enough to, under the SIV program, come, and he lives in San Diego now. But he's the one with the 4 young 20-something siblings
Yeah.
that he's desperately trying to get out of Afghanistan right now. Not only he's worried about his connection to the US and working with the US forces, that there is a possibility that that connection is going to endanger the life of his siblings.
Right.
But also from our family, we have both in the Karzai administration and the Ghani administrations, we've had 2 Afghan generals who are first cousins,
Mm.
and we have uh, the justice minister is an uncle.
Mm.
So right there between the generals, the uncle, and the brother in San Diego, we're worried for these young kids. So what I found out today, having talked to my local senator here in Connecticut through Jim Himes' office, I have sent in the paperwork for these 4 cousins, desperately trying to get them out. And what I've been told is that yes, the paperwork has been sent over to the State Department, and that's where it is. Like with every other Afghan American whose family had helped the US
Yeah.
on the ground in Afghanistan. And so the way it stands right now, if my cousin was back in Afghanistan, the one who had worked with the US soldiers, if he was on the ground, then he can get his 4 siblings himself out. But the fact that he's in San Diego, his siblings will probably not be able to come at all.
Oh my goodness.
And that is really frightening.
Mhm.
And I thank God this young generation is very technical savvy. So I'm staying in touch with them via Instagram, via WhatsApp, and we're texting. And they're telling me, they said they tried 3 times to get to the Kabul airport. They couldn't even get near the perimeter.
Mm.
And what's happening, what the Taliban are doing is systematically, you're a Westerner, they let you go with your papers. But if you're an Afghan, even if you have your papers in hand, which they didn't, they're kicking them out. Because
They
what the
don't want-
Taliban are saying right now is like, you're not leaving.
Mm.
Because I think the reason why, and people, I've heard different people, commentators saying, well, they don't want the brain drain.
Mm.
That is a very naive way of thinking about it. I think what they're doing, they're trying to figure out who was working with the foreign services, and they're going to go after them systematically.
Yeah. That's a very logical conclusion and a very frightening proposition. Someone's writing in the chat. So that feels to me, Shekaiba, like get them out, right? Get our family out, get the people who collaborated out, get the soldier out, get folks out, get them out to safety. And then what? I'm not saying that to you like, and then what, like whatever, but I'm saying what's next? And what's our government's role in what's next? Our government has to get people out. This pressure I'm hearing, I'm not the one, but like August 30, that's the date. And if we're going to stay past that, then what? Is there some threat? Is there some, Ron, help? Like what, then what?
Yeah.
Please,
Yeah.
and just to pause, Ben, can you put in the chat anything that you've seen me send you about organizations that are getting people out? Some of them are getting them out on the down low. Some of them are getting them out on the straight up. We do, and we can be pissed and mad and blame and finger point, or we also can make a donation to help get people out. And that's what I'm inviting you to do. Like, they need money to get people out. So Ben, put that in the chat. Ron, what would you say? Like, then what? Like, you and Shekaiba are in charge. Shekaiba, the artist who knows how to use her art as activism,
Right.
and is a family person, got people on, you're in charge. She getting people out, what are you doing? What's the US government doing, Ron?
Yeah, we need to be doing a lot of things. Number one, we need to make sure that the places that we're using as intermediate staging bases and places that are accepting refugees, that are our allies that are in that business, continue to be in that business, and they provide, livable, manageable, COVID safe. I mean, we need people to be in the game with us to house, to accept, to take care of refugees. We need people to be in that game. Cutter's playing now. I mean, we're flying people up to Ramstein. I mean, we need a lot of players to be in that game and do that well, and accept the refugees and take care of them, and then get them connected back to where family is, be that here in America or whatever. So that whole operation needs to keep going. We're doing that here in the military, like Fort Lee, Virginia. I mean, there's several places here in the United States that are being used. Fort Bliss, that whole accepting of refugees, taking care of them, having a great place for them to live, that needs to keep going. That has to happen. The other thing that needs to happen, again, we're kind of short-term, secure the airfield, make sure operations keep going. I like the numbers over the last couple of days. I mean, up 20,000 getting out in a day that's not bad. It's a lot more than what the estimate was. The estimate high side was somewhere around 9,000 getting out in a day. I mean, we took out 19,000 yesterday, 21,000 the day before. That I'm encouraged by that, although I don't know the algebra problem. I don't know what X is. I don't know what the final number is that we have to get out. But I'm encouraged by the numbers. The other thing has to happen, though, after we get through this immediate piece of everyone out that can get out as quickly and orderly as possible, housed, reunified, that kind of thing. Then internationally, we've got to figure out what we're going to do with the Taliban. What are we going to do with the Taliban? What is the leverage that we have against them? How do we keep watch over humanitarian issues? And how do we not go backwards to the Taliban in the 90s? Right? I mean, how do we not go back to that? Because that's going to be unacceptable to a ton of people, to Congress, to the group of women that grew up over the last 20 years, and are educated, and I mean, that's going to be unacceptable. So what is our leverage? What's our pressure point? How do we monitor that as a world to apply pressure on the Taliban? Either you're not going to be recognized. We've got money pieces that are over the top of them. We've got neighbors, Pakistan. Iran's not going to play. Iran doesn't care for, Persian Shia versus. I mean, that's Iran's not going to play. But I mean, we've got neighbors that are down. How do we apply pressure to the Taliban to make them act in a humanitarian fashion and not go backwards in time? I think that needs to be thought about. That is a diplomatic. That is a diplomatic piece. That is a piece with money and treasury, and then militarily, we've got to be able to see it. So we've got to be able to have eyes. So unfortunately, we will not have the presence there or close by to be able to watch. We'll have to do it from, just in an unclassed fashion. We'll have to be able to put eyes on what's happening in the country, to at least be able to monitor and understand. Humanitarian wise, and then when we see threats perhaps starting to form that could threaten our own national security, we need to be able to take that out. So if we start getting a big Al Qaeda presence, we start getting a huge ISIS-K presence, something like that, we need to have some triggers and have the ability to go take that out, so that doesn't become a threat to our home country. So that's a little bit of the strategy that I would look at, Jeff.
That's really good, Ron. I wish you were in charge.
Yeah.
Shekaiba, I want you to be in charge. What would you say to that? And how can we, maybe as a last question, Shekaiba, how can we center the lives of of Afghans in Afghanistan? How can we center activists? How can we center artists? How can we center the resistance?
Mhm.
What can we do?
Well, right now, one of the biggest thing that's happening is trying to get the artist not only along with the U.S. Citizens and the Afghans who are helping the military, but right now the biggest threat is artists and poets and and anybody affiliated with culture. So I agree with you 100%, Ron. I think the the I have a little bit more of a concern is that Afghan is such a ethnically diverse country.
Yes.
It's a very ethnically diverse. It's a country of many faiths within Islam, but
Yes.
also has a huge population of people who are not Muslim. I mean, um, we've had we've had history of Afghan Indians, so who so it, that to me right now is very scary because I think we are going to see ethnic cleansing. We are going to see um, uh, kind of the also arts and cultural cleansing.
Mm.
I mean, we saw that last time with the Taliban when they blew up the Buddhas.
Yeah.
The Buddhists had been in Afghanistan for several thousand years. Even when Islam came from the Arabian, as it came towards Afghanistan, and Afghanistan at the time was a Buddhist, Hindu, mono, some parts Persian monotheist, but other parts, very shamanistic. At that time, nobody said, let's blow up the Buddhas until the Taliban come. So the reason, it wasn't only about just getting rid of um, the arts, but what it was a clear signal that Afghanistan, we're getting rid of your history by getting rid of your culture.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
They looted last time when they were there. They looted the entire Kabul museum.
Right.
I
That's right.
mean, Kabul was on the Silk Road. I mean, this is where Kabul, northern Kabul had Greek cities.
Yes. Yes.
So those were all looted. And it's amazing how I ended up in some of the museums around the world and I see little placards that say, recently acquired, and everything is given credit to the Persian culture, but never dated as to where they got the pieces from.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Okay, I've seen a few of those at the Met too, just to mind you.
Oh my God.
So, but the thing is that, so getting back to your question, how do you make this country secure?
Mhm.
I think at this point, the way I see it, the people who have vested interest in seeing this region secure, number one thing is security. If
Yeah.
people have security in their daily lives, they will not pack up and nobody wants to. I can tell you this right now. Nobody wants to be an immigrant.
Hmm. Yeah.
Same way, if you're in South America and you had security in Honduras and Nicaragua and Bolivia, Belize,
Yeah.
you are not going to get up and say, I'm just going to drop everything, get my bags and get my kids and go jump over the border to the US.
Right.
It's
Right.
the same thing that is happening in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Security is number one.
Yeah.
But the people who have the greatest investment in this right now, it's the European Union.
Yeah.
Because we have this wave of anti-immigrant all over Europe.
Yes.
When you destabilize a nation like Afghanistan, 6 weeks later, those people are going to be in the Mediterranean Sea
Yeah.
on boats, trying to
Boats.
get over to Greece, trying to get over to um, Italy, you
Yeah.
name it. So it is the European Union
The need
needs
to.
to step up and
Yeah.
needs to put pressure on the countries that are going to rush to recognize the Taliban. And those countries are Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Pakistan, and China.
Yeah.
I mean, the winners right now from all of this, quite honestly, the destruction of Afghanistan, the winners are China and Pakistan.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's right.
Yeah,
Uh,
because China has already bought half of Afghanistan. I mean, it has gotten all the gem mines. It has all gotten the natural resources, because Afghanistan has a great deposit of what is the chips that we use on our cell phones. Uh,
That's
uh,
good. Yeah.
It's got lithium.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got lithium and it's got the.
Lithium. Thank you. Yeah. So China, Russia, Pakistan. So this is now the Great Games, you know, the new version of the Great Games. Back in the days, you had basically Britain and US and
US.
duking it out. Now it's China, Pakistan, and Russia.
Friends, we are at 7:05, and I feel like I could talk to you and Ron for hours more. And I have no idea what the next step is in this conversation. I'm looking at Ben like, we got to do another one. But I want to ask you both to tell us, how can we follow you, learn from you? What is your closing comment to this group of people who came and want to know, who will find us online and want to know? Maybe Ron, you go first, just a quick, what could they do? And then if you would tell Shekaiba how to find you in the world, follow you, learn from you, so we can keep being active participants and not just like, I am a big believer in prayer, but I think prayer means putting your feet on the ground and your hand on the phone and writing a letter to Congress. So that's the kind of prayer I'm talking about. So Ronald, just a quick, what are you thinking that we could do to
Absolutely.
follow you and learn from you?
Thanks, Jack. I would say, to any of the viewers out there, I'm at LTC2 Consulting. Ron Lewis at LTC2 Consulting. Use my Facebook, my website, my email address on all of those products. Have got my email address. I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm going to stay on this. This is important to me. This is important to me. You saw my Facebook post the other day, Jack, where I just told all of those family members, everyone who I've served with in Afghanistan, thank you so much for your service and sacrifices. Thank you so much for your families, for those that we left behind. And if you want to connect, you want to talk, you want to reflect, just reach out. And I had a ton of people shoot back notes and that's important right now for people to know that was not in vain, and that their service has not been diminished just because we have botched the way in which we're getting out, which I think we have.
I'm glad you said that, love. And can you type that in the chat? Are you a good chat typer? Ben can put it in, LTC2 Consulting, just put that in the chat, Ben. Okay.
Absolutely.
Ava, how can we follow you, learn from you? What do you want to tell us as we close?
So I would say, just, I'm a big believer in just working locally.
Mhm.
I really am. Wherever neighborhood you live in, whatever church, mosque, temple, whatever you belong to, make those phone calls. Get in touch with your local refugee resettlement agencies. See what you can do. And honestly, we voted for these people. I'm sorry, we voted for our representatives.
Yeah.
Get on the phone. Let them know how upset you are with what is going on. Let them know, because I feel like that is democracy at work.
That's right.
Yeah. And how you could reach me, I'm on Instagram at Shekaiba Photography. Shekaiba, you know what? I can type it.
You type that too? Thank you.
And on Facebook, Shekaiba Bennett. You could find me that way. And yeah, I am not a TikTok person, and I am not a, what is the other one?
Twitter?
Not a Twitter person. So
But Shekaiba Photography and Shekaiba Bennett at Facebook.
Yeah.
And friends, just I'm going to ask Ben to pop in again. The letter that my interfaith, interreligious, even some secular leaders across the country wrote. If you want to share that, that's great. We're demanding our electeds be responsible. I just got this right before we came on, so I didn't get it to Ben yet, but we tracked some of the Congress folks that we think are caring about this, and we can put that on my Twitter. I'm at Rev Jacqui Lewis at all the things, not TikTok, but all the other things, at Rev Jacqui Lewis. I'm on sabbatical and came off sabbatical to have these conversations because I just I'm so worried about what might happen next. And when I worry, I get busy. So I want to invite you, my friends, you, each of you is an activist right there in your own circle to shadow what Shekaiba's saying, right there in your neighborhood, right there in your classroom, right there with your students. How we say what we say matters. If we start using a lot of the they pronoun and making broad stroke comments, I don't think that's super helpful. Let's try to learn. Let's look at some Afghan history. Let's be intelligent about how we move in the world, and loving, fiercely loving about how we move in the world. And follow Shekaiba, Shekaiba Photography, follow Ron, LTC2 Consulting, follow me. Middle Church will try to keep you informed. Let's close in an interfaith, however you do it, prayer. One of my friends calls me a Christian voodooist. I don't think I love that, but however you think about conjuring love, let me say it that way. However you think about pulling love into the universe, let's just take a moment together and think about all the ways we name God, all the people who are practicing love and who don't look like us or sound like us, but are trying to love the world into healing. Let's see them. Let's hold, bathe in light artists, women, activists, contractors, all who are vulnerable. And invite the holy to be a partner in healing the world. And as St. Francis of Assisi would say, Lord God, Allah, make us instruments of your peace. Help us sow love everywhere. Amen.